There is a unique and silent grief, a wound that is invisible to the outside world, yet it can define the entire landscape of a person's life. It is the grief carried by the child who grew up in the shadow of a sibling's light, warmed by a sun of maternal approval that never seemed to shine quite as brightly on them. It is the experience of sitting at the same family table, yet feeling like you are eating a different meal. It is the quiet, constant confusion of watching a brother or a sister receive an effortless affection, a gentle praise, a forgiving glance, while your own best efforts are met with criticism, indifference, or a standard that is forever out of reach. For this child, a single haunting question becomes the central operating system of their entire life. Why? Why them, and not me? What is so fundamentally wrong with me, so inherently unlovable, that my own mother could not love me in the same way? This question is a poison that seeps into the soil of the soul. It shapes how you see yourself, it dictates the partners you choose, and it determines the level of happiness you believe you are worthy of. You may become a chronic overachiever, a perfectionist, desperately trying to finally earn the approval that was always withheld. Or you may become a rebel, deciding that if you cannot win the game of being the good child, you will reject the game entirely. But both paths are a reaction, a dance choreographed by that one unanswered, heartbreaking question. But what if the answer to that question is not, and has never been within you? What if you have spent a lifetime searching for a flaw in yourself that was never there? What if the key to this agonizing riddle is not found in your own perceived shortcomings, but in the hidden, unhealed shadows of your mother's own psyche? This video is an invitation to finally receive that answer. Drawing on the deep, compassionate wisdom of Carl Jung, we will explore the heartbreaking reason for this painful dynamic. This is not a journey of blame, for blame keeps us trapped in the past. It is a journey of profound clarity. It is a path to an understanding that will not erase the pain you endured, but that will, finally and forever, liberate you from the false and heavy belief that you were the cause of it. The heartbreaking reason your mother treated you worse than your siblings has nothing to do with your inherent worth, and everything to do with a dark and unconscious role you were assigned at birth. The reason is not a simple matter of preference or personality clashes. It is a well-documented and deeply toxic psychological pattern that occurs in dysfunctional family systems, often orchestrated by a parent with narcissistic traits. It is known as the golden child scapegoat dynamic. To understand this dynamic, we must first understand the psychological state of the parent who creates it. Often, a parent with deep insecurities and a fragile sense of self is psychologically incapable of holding both good and bad within themselves. This is a defense mechanism known as splitting. In their mind, to be flawed is to be worthless. Therefore, to maintain their own illusion of perfection, they must project the two halves of their own psyche onto their children. They must create one child who is all good and another who is all bad. The golden child is the one onto whom the parent projects all of their own idealized qualities, their unlived dreams, and their fantasies of perfection. This child can do no wrong. Their successes are the parent's successes. Their beauty is the parent's beauty. They are the living embodiment of the parent's idealized self-image. While this may seem like a privileged position, it is a heavy burden in its own right, as this child is never loved for who they truly are, but for the role they play. And then there is the scapegoat. To maintain the illusion of being an all-good parent with an all-good child, the parent must find a place to dump all of their own disowned, negative, and uncomfortable feelings. All of their own insecurities, their failures, their rage, their shame, their unhealed shadow, all of it must be projected onto a single external container, and that container, tragically, becomes the scapegoat child. You were cast in this role. This role had nothing to do with your actual qualities, your personality, or your behavior. In fact, you may have been cast in this role precisely because you were the most emotionally sensitive child, the most authentic, or the one who was brave enough to speak the truth in a family that operated on unspoken lies. Your very light may have been the thing that triggered your mother's deepest shadows. As the scapegoat, you could do no right. Your achievements were minimized, your mistakes were magnified and became proof of your inherent flawedness. You were blamed for the family's problems, for your mother's unhappiness, for the very tension in the air. You became the repository for all the darkness that she could not and would not face within herself. This is the heartbreaking reason. You were not treated worse because you were less lovable. You were treated worse because your mother, in her own unhealed state, needed a place to put her own pain, and you were chosen for the part. This was not a reflection of you. It was a confession of her. Understanding this is not about blaming her. It is about finally and completely absolving yourself. Now that we have named the dynamic of the golden child and the scapegoat, we must journey deeper into the very heart of the mystery and ask the question, why? Why does a mother do this? The answer is one of the most powerful and important concepts in all of Jungian psychology: unconscious shadow projection. Every human being has a shadow. The shadow, as Jung described it, is the unconscious, disowned part of ourselves. It is not necessarily evil. It is simply the collection of every quality, both positive and negative, that we have learned to reject in ourselves in order to be acceptable to the world. For a mother, the shadow might contain her unlived ambitions, her suppressed rage at a life that did not turn out as she planned, her secret insecurities, her own unhealed childhood wounds, her dependency, her wildness. It is everything about herself that she cannot and will not acknowledge. A psychologically mature person learns over a lifetime to face their own shadow, to own it, to integrate it. But a person with deep narcissistic wounds, a person whose entire sense of self is a fragile fortress, cannot do this. To admit to the existence of her own shadow would be to admit she is not perfect, and for her, that feels like a psychological death. And so her psyche, in a desperate act of self-preservation, does something both brilliant and devastating. It takes all of the darkness from its own inner basement, all the qualities it cannot stand within itself, and it projects them outward onto a screen. And the closest, most available, and most vulnerable screen is her own child. But why you? Why were you chosen to be the screen for her shadow, while your sibling was chosen to be the screen for her light? The reasons are complex and deeply tragic. Often, the scapegoat child is the one who is the most authentic. The child who is spirited, who speaks the truth, who refuses to play the family's unspoken games, becomes a profound threat to the parent's fragile ego. Your authenticity was a bright light that threatened to expose the shadows in her own curated world. And for that, you were unconsciously punished and labeled as the difficult one. Often, the scapegoat child is the most sensitive. The emotionally attuned and empathic child is the perfect container for the family's unhealed pain. You could feel your mother's unspoken rage, her silent grief, and because you could feel it, your very presence became a constant, unbearable reminder to her of the very things she was trying to deny. You were punished not for your flaws, but for your perceptiveness. And sometimes, most paradoxically of all, you are chosen to be the scapegoat because you are a mirror. You may have been the child who most resembled a part of your mother that she despised. Or you may have been the one who was blessed with a quality, beauty, intelligence, creativity, that she secretly lacked and envied. Your very existence highlighted her own insecurities. This is the heartbreaking truth that can set you free. You were not treated worse because you were less than your siblings. You may have been treated worse because, in some profound way, you were more. You were more authentic, more sensitive, more of a mirror. You were the one who, just by being yourself, made it impossible for her to continue lying to herself. And because she could not face her own shadow, she forced you to carry it for her. Being cast in the role of the scapegoat is not an experience that ends when you leave your childhood home. It is a profound imprinting, a psychological wound that, if left unhealed, will silently and relentlessly shape the entire trajectory of your adult life. The ghost of the role you were forced to play will follow you into your friendships, your career, and most devastatingly, into your romantic relationships. The first and most profound scar is the unworthiness wound. This is not just a passing feeling of insecurity. It is a deep, cellular, and often unconscious belief that you are fundamentally flawed and unlovable. The message you received from your mother, "You are the problem," was not just an opinion, it became the very foundation of your identity. You learned that love is not a given, but something that must be earned, a prize for which you are inherently unqualified. This wound manifests in your adult life as a constant, quiet striving. You become a chronic perfectionist. You believe that if you can just be flawless, in your work, in your appearance, in your home, you might finally be worthy of the approval that was withheld. You become an overachiever, not out of a joyful sense of purpose, but out of a desperate need to build a resume so impressive that it will finally disprove the old verdict that you are not enough. This also turns you into a chronic people pleaser. You become exquisitely attuned to the needs and moods of others while completely neglecting your own. You learn to silence your own voice, your own desires, and your own boundaries, because the orphan within you believes that to have a need is to be a burden, and to be a burden is to risk abandonment. You become a master at being what everyone else needs you to be, and in the process, you completely forget who you actually are. Most tragically, this dynamic will inevitably lead you to sabotage your own relationships. The psyche is a creature of habit. It is drawn to what is familiar, even if what is familiar is profoundly painful. And so, you will unconsciously find yourself drawn to partners and friends who replicate the very dynamic you endured as a child. You may choose a partner who is emotionally distant, who is critical, who makes you feel perpetually less than, because this painful dynamic feels, to your wounded inner child, like home. You will find yourself once again in the role of the good defendant, over-explaining, justifying, and performing for the love of someone who is fundamentally incapable of seeing your worth, because they, like your mother, are too blinded by their own shadows. You are not choosing these partners consciously. Your unhealed wound is choosing them for you, in a tragic and relentless attempt to finally get a different ending to the same old story. But the story will never change until you realize that the work is not to change the other actors, but to finally heal the original wound within yourself. To understand the origins of your wound and to see how it has shaped your life is a profound and necessary act of illumination. But knowledge alone is not enough. The final journey is one of healing. And healing from the mother wound is not a single event, but a courageous and sacred process. As we have discussed, this video will not offer you a simple 3-step ritual to fix this pain, for that would be a disservice to its depth. Instead, it will offer you a map for the ongoing path to healing, a path composed of 3 essential stages: seeing, grieving, and reparenting. The first stage is the practice of seeing. This is the act of consciously withdrawing your mother's projection from your own identity. For your entire life, you have been wearing a heavy, ill-fitting coat that was not yours. It is a coat woven from her insecurities, her rage, her disappointments. The practice of seeing is the act of finally and consciously taking off that coat. The next time a painful memory arises, the next time the inner critic begins to whisper the old familiar story that you are flawed, you must practice this. You must pause, and you must say to yourself, either silently or aloud, "This was not about me. This was about her shadow." This is not an act of blame. It is an act of radical clarity. You are not excusing her behavior. You are simply refusing to continue to identify with its source. You are, with the clear, steady gaze of the wise woman you are today, separating her story from your own. The second stage is the practice of grief. This is the stage that many of us try to bypass. We want the healing without the feeling, but this is impossible. You cannot heal a wound by pretending it doesn't hurt. You must give yourself radical permission to grieve the loss of the mother you needed and deserved, but never truly had. You must allow yourself to feel the profound anger that you were not allowed to feel as a child. The anger at the injustice, at the unfairness. Your anger is not a negative emotion. It is the sacred life force within you finally rising up to say, what happened was not okay. You must also allow yourself to feel the profound, heartbreaking sadness. The sadness for the little girl who tried so hard to be good enough, who never understood why she wasn't. To cry these tears is not an act of weakness. It is an act of cleansing. You are watering the dry and barren ground of your own heart, allowing something new to finally have the chance to grow. The third, and most important stage, is the practice of reparenting. This is the alchemical work. Having seen the truth and grieved the loss, You now begin the sacred task of giving to yourself what you never received. You become your own good enough mother. This is a daily, conscious practice. When the inner critic, who so often sounds just like your mother, begins to tell you that you have failed, your inner good mother steps in and says, "You are not a failure. You are learning. I am proud of you for trying." When you feel overwhelmed, your inner good mother says, "You are allowed to rest. Your peace is important." You learn to speak to your own inner child with the words of unconditional love and acceptance that she was always starving to hear. You become the source of your own validation, your own safety, your own comfort. This is not just a mental exercise. You are actively forging new neural pathways in your brain. You are, with every act of self-compassion, rewiring your nervous system for worthiness. This is the path. It is not quick and it is not easy. But it is the path that leads not just to healing, but to a profound and unshakable rebirth. This path of healing, of seeing, of grieving, of reparenting, is the most profound work a human soul can undertake, and it leads to a final, sovereign rebirth. It is here that you will discover the hidden gift that was buried, like a diamond, in the heart of your deepest wound. The psychological truth is that the scapegoat child, the one who was treated worse, is often the one who is forced to embark on a deep inner journey much earlier and with much greater urgency than her siblings. The golden child, comfortable in the warm but ultimately stunting sun of their mother's approval, may never feel the need to question, to search, to look within. But you, the one who was cast out into the cold, you were given a different and in many ways a more sacred opportunity. You were forced to learn how to build your own fire. This is where you transform from the scapegoat into the alchemist. The alchemist is the powerful sovereign archetype who has learned the sacred art of turning lead into gold. She is not afraid of the dark, messy, leaden material of her own painful past. She understands that this is the very raw material from which the most precious wisdom is forged. She has walked through the fire of her own grief and anger, and she has emerged, not burned, but purified. This is not just a poetic metaphor. It is a psychological phenomenon known as post-traumatic growth. And the woman who heals the mother wound often develops a set of profound superpowers as a result of her journey. The first is a profound and piercing empathy. Because you have known the pain of being unseen and misunderstood, you develop an incredible capacity to see and understand the pain of others. You can hear the unspoken truths in their words. You can feel the silent grief behind their smiles. Your wound has become a bridge of compassion to the rest of the human race. The second is a highly calibrated authenticity detector. Your soul, having been fed a lifetime of inauthentic messages, has developed a powerful allergy to them. You can spot a lack of integrity, a hidden agenda, or a false persona from a mile away. Your sensitivity is no longer a liability. It is your most reliable guidance system. The third is an unshakable resilience. You have already survived one of the most difficult psychological dynamics a person can endure. You have faced the coldness of the one person who was supposed to be your ultimate source of warmth. Having navigated this primal storm, the challenges of adult life, a difficult boss, a conflict with a friend, a romantic disappointment, often seem less intimidating in comparison. You know in your very bones that you can survive. And the fourth, and most important, is a radical self-reliance. You learned from the very beginning that you could not outsource your sense of worth. You were forced to become your own source. You had to become your own good mother, your own best friend, your own staunchest defender. The greatest gift your mother never intended to give you was the opportunity to discover that you never needed her approval to be whole. You have become your own anchor, and this is the true gold. This is the power that makes you not just a survivor, but a sovereign. We began this journey asking a single heartbreaking question. Why was I treated worse? A question that has likely echoed in the silent chambers of your heart for a lifetime. We have traveled through the painful dynamics of the golden child and the scapegoat. We have faced the deep Jungian truth of the maternal shadow, and we have walked the sacred path of healing, and we arrive here, at the end of the trial. For that is what your life has been. An endless, exhausting trial where you were the sole defendant, accused of a crime you did not commit. the crime of being unworthy of your own mother's unconditional love. You have stood on that witness stand for years, presenting the evidence of your achievements, your kindness, your efforts, all in a desperate attempt to prove your innocence. The heartbreaking reason, the one we have uncovered together, is the final piece of evidence that changes everything. It is the irrefutable proof that the trial was a sham from the very beginning. The reason you were treated worse was never about you. It was always and only about her shadow. And so, the journey of healing is not about winning the case. It is about realizing that you have the power to dismiss it entirely. You are no longer the accused child. You are the sovereign queen of your own inner world, and you are the ultimate judge. And it is time to deliver the final verdict. You were never guilty. The trial is over. You are free. You are free to walk out of that cold, dark courtroom, leaving the ghosts of old judgments behind. You are free to stop trying to earn a love that was never yours to win. And you are free now to begin building a new kingdom. A kingdom founded not on the shifting sands of another's approval, but on the solid, unshakable bedrock of your own hard-won, undeniable and sacred value.